should come on together, that would be so wrong. Together, we can weather any storm. If we should come on together, that would be so wrong. Together, we can weather any storm. If we should come on together, that would be so wrong.
Peace, peace. Glad everybody settled in. What's up, man? It's the Hood Mystic representing www.hoodmystic.com. But give me 1 second. Let me tighten one more thing up and we'll be ready to go. Ooh, let me cut it off mute so y'all can hear me. Peace, 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 man. Can you buy that beat? Do I got a layaway system set up? I never even sold a beat before in my life, so I don't know that process. Like, I'll email you the beat though, see what you come up with. It ain't nothing, so part of the lunar eclipse, part of what I've been talking about in the article is artistic expression. And some of us have an artistic expression that we need to get out. Some of us may not be artistic at all. Some of us may have financial prosperity in our lives. Being philanthropy, there's a lot of people who may be needing help in New Orleans, and just really learning to be compassionate through this time, because even though a lot of us are experiencing a lot of success, there are a lot of people who are really struggling. So in this space, in this time, the context of this conversation would be centered in compassion, centered in the guru, the great teacher, and really understanding what all of this is about. So within this space, the luster result is one of those things that came up in doing this study. And the luster result is basically the idea that we hold that material abundance is everything. But is it really everything, And really come into that grips and really come into that space and really come into that understanding that maybe there's more to life. And the people that teach us that are more to life are considered the gurus. And so the lunar eclipse is about recognizing our teachers. And so one could think that this is about a pastor. One could think that this is about a swami or a priest or something to that effect, the priestess, the great high priestess, and all of this. But that's not our actual teacher, right? Our teacher is the people that kind of triggered us into anger, made us upset, brought us into particular situations that we didn't always feel comfortable about, and then teaching us how to really rely on self. And so the greatest teachers help us find ourselves. So, in discussing the full moon lunar eclipse that's happening on July 16th, uh, we're dealing with the second house and we're dealing with the eighth house. We're dealing with material possessions, but we're also dealing with alchemy. And the moon is in the eighth house and dealing with alchemy and dealing with an exact conjunction to Pluto. So when the full moon happens, it's going to be in the 29th degree of Sagittarius, and it's going to be in Vedic Sagittarius, and it's also going to be in sidereal Sagittarius. When sidereal Sagittarius means that the moon is actually going to be in Sagittarius when the full moon occurs. So if a person says the full moon is going to be in Capricorn, maybe it's going to be on the same street, but it's not going to be at the direct address. So it depends. If you're trying to find the street of a person where a person lives, then you could say it's in Capricorn. It's no difference, but it's 25 degrees away from where it's actually. So if you want to deliver a package, if you want to deliver a message, it's most important to deal with the Sagittarian energy, to deal with this Gemini energy, to deal with this twin flame energy that's on the planet. Otherwise, you're the opposite of this is really being in that Capricorn energy, really striving, really having a hope and a dream and bring it into fruition, where Sagittarius is slightly different. It's very much of a path, very much of a deep knowing. And a deep knowing and a wanting can't exist in the same space, striving, rising to the top. And, you know, these things are what we desire, and these things can take over our lives, and they make everything. So if you have a particular desire, a particular success that you want to accomplish, then you will involve your spirit, you will involve your love, you'll involve everything in you. You'll develop this ambition, and you'll be like a bullet or arrow piercing through the fog, as opposed to, just letting things come to you, living in the moment, processing the past, really showing up in the present, and not really looking forward to the future. And so being in the present, being in the moment brings us back to being artistic. And so the eighth house of alchemy within itself is not so alchemy within itself. There is no goal within alchemy, especially when you talk about breaking yourself down. And Pluto transformation, there is no goal in transformation. Real quick, I have a video called Pluto Explained, but generally, if we have an acorn, either that acorn decides, I'm going to live an acorn life, I'm going to have an acorn wife, acorn children, build an acorn house, or I'm going to burrow myself deep into the ground for months on end and sprout and to become an oak tree. And so spiritual transformation is us deciding to adopt a completely different life, completely distant from that which is called the acorn life. So the tree thus symbolizes a new life and a new way of being that is speaking to ascension and speaking to transformation, but it's not like an acorn donated a lot of money to a charity and now he becomes a tree. That actually takes work, that actually takes a redirection of the social political game of humanity, and then accepting a spiritual life and to find a guide throughout this process. So my idea for this video was to kind of go through all of the guides who have helped me and urged me along through this path. And then as I began to study throughout the week, I realized that it isn't about them. It isn't about me if you view me as a guru or anything of that space, because that's not really what's happening. It brings me back to this original point in this original slide. Because there are three types of gurus. So, guru, well, we'll talk about this further, but real quick, what we're discussing is the guru that's within us all, and then paying respect and homage to the guru within us all. And it makes sense as we've been building it up through these daily energy readings, through the new moon solar eclipse, that this actual new moon and this actual event, it makes more sense if we're looking at it esoterically rather looking at it from a space of the exoteric actual human being guru. And even though that person exists, we could look at everybody in that guru form, the good people and the bad people, because the reality is that the people that we learn from are the people who make our lives the most hell. We learn more about ourselves through those people than the people who made our lives comfortable. Me and my wife were just having a conversation about having a favored life versus a person who doesn't have an unfavored life. And then when they grasp spirituality, how some people gravitate towards spirituality. And I was just only speaking for myself. I've always had to have a close relationship with God, because my earliest memories of walking into school is like people having all of the jokes, like every single, like it was like I felt bombarded by jokes, and the teachers would laugh because I would laugh even sometimes because they would be funny. But I've always had to find something other than the material world to sustain me, like through high school, through middle school, uh through early adulthood. I've always had to have a close relation to God, because the relationship with the material world has not been pleasant for me. I've never really had certain things. So it's easy for me to deal with spirituality. Now, on the flip side, a person who, there's generational wealth, there's success, there's benevolence, there's privilege that exists within people. So this material world, this physical world, has been beneficial to them. So in that space, there's more people who deal with the beneficial material world, believe it or not. So the actual people who's really into the spiritual, who's actually here day in and day out speaking this type of thing, are far and few between. And even when they're here, they're only here for a short amount of time, and they receive like their money, and then they become really watered down, and they become extremely corporate. They forget about the average person, because it was more or less about having those material possessions to get to a point. So overall, because this is a lot of information, and this is something that I've been working on for a long time. So I would invite everybody to visit the website hoodmystic.com and read the article and kind of get a more overview of this information for yourself. But I'm just gonna just try to discuss this from my perspective of how I was just viewing it, because a lot of astrologers will have their perspective and their understanding of this lunar eclipse, and it might be completely different from mine. But actually dealing with this energy and interfacing with the astrology day in and day out, and constantly processing it, and not and processing it in such a way that I'm able to translate it and bring it into real terms. And this is something that I do daily in multiple different areas. Uh, I feel as though I'm very good at it. So, with that being said, I will hope that this message does resonate and you're able to bring something from it. So, Sun and Gemini oppose the Moon. The Sun is about to move out of Gemini into Cancer, really signifying a shift in energy post lunar eclipse. In order to deal with shifts, in order to process shifts, you have to understand that you have to now do something with this energy. If you continuously are doing the same things and just living your life in the same ways, then you'll never really fully understand the inspiration of the soul. The soul can speak to you and wake up many different reservoirs in your life through meditation that wasn't there previously. And when these things are awakening and opening up, and these could be talents that you never known, abilities that you've never known, psychic senses that you never knew you had. Oh, I'm clairaudient. Oh, I'm clairsentient. Oh, I can see my past lives now. These superpowers now coming online, that's just really one level of it when you think about the moon being in Sagittarius, because another level of the moon being in the third decan of Sagittarius is that is ruled by Saturn. And the card that rules that decan is the Ten of Wands. And it could within itself represent you being overworked, or you constantly being bombarded by responsibilities. And so if that is happening on a subconscious level, where you're just trying to make people happy, and on the other side your personality is going through a supreme overhaul of this Gemini energy of the self and the ego peering at each other, like that meme between Diddy and the old boy, they just like looking at each other like having a stare off. Like that's what the ego and the soul is are doing now, and moving into the lunar eclipse. So the thing about that is that you can't hide from the soul, because your soul rests within you. So everything that you do, every mistake that you make, you have to address that shit within yourself. You can lie to me, you can lie to your mama, you can lie to your husband, you can lie to your wife, you can lie to your kids, but you can't lie to yourself. It's a real good song by Teddy Pendergrass, and I think Zane redid it. It's called You Can't Hide From Yourself. Everywhere you go, there you are. That's really what this energy is really about. And so really understanding that, uh how do you begin to act? How do you begin to express yourself? Through either acknowledging the Sun in Gemini, and then acknowledging that you can't use me, you can't force me to be responsible for you, when I truly have to be responsible for me in my transformation. Sagittarius, eighth house, transformation, overhaul, really taking things from square one and beginning again is very beautiful, and it's very promising. But how many people are really dealing with people who support that though? That's really the trouble with this actual lunar eclipse, because as the emotions rise between Mercury and Mars being in very emotional spaces, Jupiter being in very emotional spaces, these can bring about emotional conversations, things that you think that people have let go of, that they really haven't let go of, and you probably know that they didn't let go of, but now you actually see, like, okay, I actually see what's really happening here. So it's really a time of truth, It's really a time to really understand that by being grounded, being focused in reality, and not living in particular fantasies and fairy tales can really bring about an actual fantasy and fairy tale like experience, because the idea that we want to revert back to is that all matter is spiritual. So, if all matter is spiritual, by disengaging with matter, by disengaging with the physical world without proper context, then you could be lost. You could be really lost, and that's why I think that really interfacing and dealing with the soul is extremely important, and then dealing with the physical world, because as I deal with the soul and then I deal with the physical world, it becomes a magical place. It becomes a world of enchantment. It becomes a world of mystery, full of fairies, full of spirits, full of energy that, and it's one of those things too that if you never pay attention to it and you never put your eyes to it, then you don't see it. Therefore, out of sight, out of mind. But once you open your eyes to the world that's around you, once you open your eyes to fairies, once you say fairies do exist and I just never look for them, and then they make themselves apparent, and now I can be talking to my wife and I might say something, and then we'll be flooded with fairies, you know. And so a lot of different things. I could go on and on and on. But what I'm saying is that interfacing with the inner guru, following the inner guru, really opening yourself up to a nature type consciousness really opens you up to a world that you never knew really existed because you never paid attention to it, because the physical world was the physical world within itself. My spiritual world was a spiritual world within itself, and you never really combined those two. So Gemini is allowing us to combine those energies at the same time, allowing us to transform into what we see. And so so basically in that stare off, the ego and the soul's looking at each other back and forth like Diddy and Oh Boy, but at a certain point something needs to happen. You don't just sit and stare, and you have all of these great revelations and realizations. Okay, that's great, but what are you doing with it? Where are you going with it? So in the spiritual process, right? I had this quote here that says, "It is unnatural to aim at any goal." And so that brings us all the way back to the first video when I started coming back with these lives, speaking to emptying your cup. So in that space, right? Empty your cup is a martial artist term, because you just a student in the game, but you already know what type of teacher you want, so you have all of these feelings. I don't want to do these kicks. I don't want to do this. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, that's very unnatural. And you a student in martial arts and you trying to learn. If you know everything, why is you even in the class? So therefore, when it comes to life, it's very unnatural to have a particular goal. And what spirit is like kind of helping me to realize that, like, showing me things like as I expose my Native American tradition and I read the stories and I read the literature, and we're literally on stolen ground at a certain level. So therefore, it's like, why would I want to build a house on stolen ground? It's like, why would I want to purchase property from somebody who got this land through illegal means? And that's kind of where I'm at with it, and trying to figure out a resolution for within myself. And it could just be so simple to get a loan and to get a mortgage and to get a house, but within itself it seems unnatural to me. So all kind of goals seem unnatural, especially as I'm really working with the spiritual and really understanding my heart. And my reality now is that every moment I spend in pure and utter bliss. I don't really look forward to anything, because I've actually looked forward to this moment 20 years ago, 15 years ago, 30 years ago, even. As we were lighting the fire yesterday and I was looking inside of my home, I couldn't believe that was my home, because I was always in a space where I never even imagined to have a home and lighting a bonfire. We got the grill going. We sipping Hennessy. Like, we really enjoying our life. And I don't have to go to work in the morning. I got money in the bank. I got all my kids with me. My kids is beautiful. They happy. They healthy. I never, ever, ever, ever would imagine that would happen to me. So in that space, I'm able to show and prove that this actual shit really do work. But I never could want for that. I never could say I just want a nice house and a nice family. I only had to experience a beautiful family to be grateful and to be in bliss at all points. It's hard to not be in bliss and look at my sons. It's hard not to be in bliss and, like, lay in the bed with my wife and, cuddle up with my wife. It's hard. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's hard for me to be upset and all of that. So in that space, I offer you peace and love and bliss and success, and to know that by letting go of things that make your life hell, you increase your life. It makes things better. And not to view it like, oh, that really was hell. But I've actually learned from this. Thank you for this experience. And now it's time for me to move on. This is the true guru. That job you hate is your guru. That relationship that drug you through the mud, that is your guru that we speak of. Because if that situation was not so bad, if that situation was not so horrible, you would have never thought to go within yourself and find the true guru that rests within your heart. You would have kept putting that person on a pedestal. That's why sometimes I'm deliberately, like, I'm not even deliberately shitty. I'm just a shitty person. Like, sometimes I get moody, and I used to try to hide that from my wife because I didn't like the way that it made her feel. But then again, I don't like the way that I feel when I'm being fake. So if I feel like being shitty, let me be shitty. Let me be alone, because that's what I want to be anyway. I just really sometimes don't want to be bothered. I just want to sit and work and, like, sit in pure quiet. Sometimes I just want that. And you would have to deal with a person that respects that about you and gives you that space, or looks at you like you're crazy, right? So therefore, then you kind of know, like, what you should do in these kind of relationships where people are pressing you for doing things that you naturally want to do. Whether it comes to polygamy, that'll be a big thing that's dealing with people in their relationships, because the reality is that you don't necessarily want to let your partner go, but you also want to do other things. And this is men and women, and it doesn't have to be sexual, and it very well could be sexual, because you may be in a relationship that has everything but sexual. You could be in a relationship that's very sexual, but it doesn't have the communication. So therefore, being honest about your twin, because Sagittarius is a twin, Gemini is a twin, and when you speak about twin energy, you don't exist in a vacuum. None of us that exist in this world exist in a vacuum. And I talk to people who live off the grid, they're remote, or whatever the case may be. They still got to get their goddamn mail delivered to them. They still got to get their internet service provider hooked up to them. So what, like, they you need people. So if we kind of want to retract from this idea, then you only doing a disservice to yourself. We have to figure ourselves out, really. So in figuring ourselves out, what really helps this energy is it supporting transits. The supporting transits that are either in close conjunction or really applying or moving up to. There are a lot of transits that are separating, meaning that a lot of these things that are happening within the solar system, they've already, like, the check has been signed and now we're moving on. The deal has been signed and now we're moving on. Now we're moving into a space where I love astrology when things like this happen. You have a lunar eclipse, but then you also have Venus and Saturn being exact at opposition at 22 degrees of Gemini and 22 degrees of Saturn. So Saturn being in Sagittarius is third deacon, the deacon for which it rules. Saturn in 2019 is not Saturn in 1968. Two different planets. And because we deal with the law of thermodynamic energy, meaning that Saturn being a strict, rigid, so look at life or imagine life in 1968 and then transfix your world into 2019 at a pride parade. Now imagine the pride parade being in 1968. Like, they would have called the National Guard. They would have got canines. They would have got them hoses. They would have hosed y'all off the streets. Y'all got kids out here, like, and so, like, they would just completely, their brain would shit. And that's relative to Saturn's rings disappearing. So that strict, overbearing energy that once existed on the planet is just not there. And even more so, to double down on that, it is retrograde. So the fact that of it being retrograde, my nigga, you can do everything that you want to do. What's really happening is that overbearing 10 of wands oppression energy that people feel is basically an idea that they hold is not really there. And the only way you can figure out that Saturn ain't as powerful or as popping as it used to be is that you have to engage. You have to unify that opposition, because you have an idea in your mind of something that you just can't do. And that idea is a complete farce. It's a lie. It's not even true. But in your mind, you holding on to it like, I can't move. I can't leave my mom. I can't break up. I can't. But why? Oh, it's a law and da 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 da. Did you do any research into the law books? Have you studied the law? No, but I talked to a lawyer. Like, all of these types of things of that's like, every time I've been talking to people, it's like, yeah, the veil has been lifted, but this, that, and the third, but. And the reality is there is no buts. But you have to really, you can Google Saturn rings disappearing. You could go to a pride parade all summer. You could go to the Pride Olympics. You understand what I'm saying? You could go, like, you could do all types of shit today that you couldn't do in the 60s. But a lot of us, since we've grown up around families that were morphed and built upon Jim Crow, segregation, civil rights, and the trauma that created, JFK assassination, all of these things, all of these government conspiracies that have been created to traumatize our parents, and then within that pass on that trauma. It's called epigenetic inheritance. You should look that up. But even though they've passed on that trauma, they also passed on the royalty. They passed on the DNA. They passed on the Gemini. They've passed on the twin seed. And our understanding of trauma, what happens is that it splits you from that. It splits you from that wholeness. And so, like, my wife, I'm grateful for my wife because her family didn't suffer trauma in that way. They were on the front lines fighting on civil rights, like, law enforcement, political activists, and they married smart, they betrothed their partners and things like that. And they operated under a royalty structure because my wife is a descendant from royalty, literally, and is well documented. So I'm grateful for her, you know what I'm saying? Because she showed me a different way of processing through this life that my family could not give to me. What they did give to me was of great value because it was my ancestral lineage. It's just that they have forgot it through trauma. But my wife's family did not forget it. So as we merge energies, she's reminding and triggering me in things, and I'm reminding her and triggering her in things. But we had to skip a few generations based on the particular trauma. So outside of that, through the spiritual transformation and the spiritual journey that we've embarked on together, we are able to see this Venus and Gemini, Saturn and Sagittarius opposition through correctly, as opposed to I have this idea that I can't do this, and so since I can't do this, I'm going to feel sad through this lunar eclipse. I'm going to feel sad through this solar eclipse. I'm just going to feel sad overall because I'm a believe on this particular illusion. So working through that would be very pertinent through the lunar eclipse. Any false ideas do I hold that create the illusion of fear? And if that exists, can I at least challenge that idea to see if it's valid or not? And if it proves to be valid, then check me on that shit. But I guarantee you, without a shadow of a doubt, that illusion, that fear, or that block will not be there. You only think that it's there. But trust me or not trust me, but if you try it and you be like, well, remember what you said on that video about testing your illusions and like that? I did it, and what happened was I was still blocked. My credit was still bad, or I was still unable to do that. And I'll be like, all right, you got that. But you won't say that to me because you'll realize that it's not there. And even if it is there, it's going to redirect you to why it's there and to give you a redirection outside. It could be blocked for a reason. So the idea is vibrations, keeping the vibrations high. And that could be a mental idea, that could be an emotional idea, but it also needs to be a physical idea. Sage your goddamn house, clear the energy out, like get you some resins, get you some things that really help with clearing the energy of your home. In Detroit, an analogy came to me because we were at our parents' house, and they're good people, like, but they not energy workers or nothing like that. They not sage in the house or nothing. So we sage our house, we clear the energy out, we ritualize our house and things like that. So our house is very comfortable at an energetic level. Other people's houses ain't that way. So trying to come up with an analogy to explain this to my wife, and I'm just like, well, it's like this. If you had a house full of garbage, right? Would it be comfortable for me to stay here with the house full of garbage? She said no. I was like, that's what it's like with energy for me. If people don't clear their energy, if I'm in places where the energy isn't clear, then it's like me sitting in a home or a room and they're just trash bags full of like the time that you like, and they've been living at this house, my wife 30, so 25 years they've been living at this house. If the energy was never really cleaned, then it could be a paradise and the people could be great, but there's a lot of trapped energy in people's homes, and it ain't to pick on nobody, it's just the fact. Like, and I wouldn't be picking on a person, or would I be like, you fucked up if you had trash bags, but I just couldn't stay here and be comfortable. I wouldn't think you a bad person. I just think that we have no knowledge of the unseen world, and then the baggage that we collect in the property or real estate that we have in the unseen world by saging, through burning frankincense and myrrh, by burning sandalwood, by burning wormwood, by burning mugwort, with my cauldron, walking through the house, hitting all the corners. After that, clapping through the house. I'll ring bells through the house, but I'm not gonna have no stagnant energy in my home. I refuse. And so for me, this is how I keep my vibrations high. I've noticed that if I don't do this, then it's like one of those things where if you clean it, then it just comes back more and it just comes back more. So it's just like something that you just have to stay on top of. And this is just me personally. So when I speak of vibrations being high, Like I said, it could be mental, it could be emotional, but for me, it's very much physical. And the physical and the spiritual go hand in hand because once I'm doing the physical work, I'm really aligning to the spiritual in real terms. I'm always surrounded by altars when I talk to you guys because this is physical. I'm talking, I'm here, but I'm also transmission something from a spiritual level. So we have an ancestor altar, we have a prosperity altar, we have a Native American altar, we have an East Indian altar, we have a goddess altar, we have a knowledge altar. And so all of these I feel like are portals of information, physical things, but I take the physical and I make it spiritual. This is something that I really developed over time by buying figurines and things like that. And to me, the figurines and stuff like that is like I make them spiritual, but it's like you have to be at that level of understanding how spiritual this world is and how you find it through the physical nature and have to kind of open your eyes to it. So that's really the opposition. Sorry for being long winded, but I felt like it needed to be said. And so Mars in Cancer trying Jupiter in Scorpio is the emotional intelligence, the emotional push that we're dealing with for this full moon. Um, if we're gonna look at this correctly, um, one would say that if you're listening to this, and no matter how many people you're listening to this with, you are an individual, and within you is a heart, and within that heart is a spirit or a soul. And have you honored that? Have you recognized that? And have you really connected to that on a spiritual level? When we have high energy from the soul, when we have particular blessings and particular boons, it's very easy for us to buy shit, you know, do stuff, go on trips, enjoy life, and that thing. But if you haven't noticed a pattern that is bringing you back to the same situation that you left from, then you haven't really learned. So, what's actually giving us the energy to transform is this Mars in Cancer trine Jupiter in Scorpio, because this is an eighth house solar eclipse in Sagittarius. The eighth house is ruled by Scorpio. Sagittarius is ruled by Jupiter. So you pay attention to things like that in particular alignments. New experiences, new emotional bonds are available through transformation, not through hoping and wishing that your dreams that you've been having for 15 years that never came true, that you hope that, your husband changed, hoping that your wife changed, all of these fantasies, much different from actually doing the alchemy, actually speaking your truth, actually bringing forth that which is true to you, that which you really vibrate with, and just kind of just going full force with it. So, finally, we'll deal with the card of the week, which is the Queen of Disc. The Queen of Disc rules the 21st degree of Sagittarius up to the 20th degree of Capricorn. And I feel like this is a perfect card for a lunar eclipse, even if we don't particularly know it. Um, the Queen of Disc is very practical and nurturing. if we're going to view this as a particular energy, then it's just going to be somebody that puts you at a place where you could nurture yourself and take care of yourself, not put you in a place where they can control you, but see that you're hurting and make sure that you're not hurting anymore. Very motherly, very loving, very nurturing. The Queen of Dis also represents prosperity, security, and health. Pay attention to your health, because even when you look up the etymology of the word wealth, it's tied into health. Meaning that if you had $5 billion in lung cancer, my nigga, you got lung cancer. So all the money in the world can't help you if you're on your deathbed. So health is mental health, emotional health, sexual healing. Queen of Dis really speaks to that. In the ancient Egyptian tarot, she appears to be naked and pure and free. Abundant, prosperous, and if you look at the background of the Thoth Tarot deck, you see a desert and you see a path that she has come from into a place of abundance. And this is all that we're basically talking about. The nakshatra of the week, the Uttara Asadha, that speaks to simply a late victory. And when you reference a late victory, meaning that you haven't got your victory yet, but it's coming. So to all of those who are patient, to all of those who are enduring, to all of those who are compassionate, your victory is still to come. And that's what this card represents. That's what this lunar eclipse represents. And this is how I understand it and view it. I haven't gotten to everything that I wanted to get to, but I did document it on the website. So be sure to visit www.hoodmystic.com to get more information about this lunar eclipse, and be sure to reach out hoodmystic@gmail.com for any questions. If you're interested about a reading, please visit www.hoodmystic.com. All the details will be there. Cashshirts.com as well. Got some new items on there. A lot of people don't know about cashshirts.com, but that clothing line is full of intention. A lot of the brands, a lot of the designs have intentions encoded within it. If you are interested in, personal design or personal things and personal sigils, be sure to reach out to me about that as well. But it's really about activating our subconscious mind, and that's really where I'm at. I appreciate everybody for tuning in. Um, just gonna really do a lot and just bringing forth this information, being repetitious about it, being here daily and speaking to it, and just trying to explain my foundations, explain how I built upon those foundations, how I turned those foundations down, how I've examined those foundations, and just really bringing this astrological, psychological, and spiritual information to the masses for as long as I can. I appreciate everybody for joining me, to support this channel, to support my content, because I'm independent. I work for myself. Please, for $1 a month, go to hoodmystic.com/Patreon. For all subscribers, I offer free monthly moon sign readings plus more. So be sure to join me there. I appreciate you guys for tuning in. I'm available on Slack as well. So anything, anywhere, feel free to reach out. It's all about connections moving forward. Got some more info. I got so much to talk about, but just stay tuned for the next video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the notification, click always so you'll be notified when I go live. But we're doing a mound trip, Southern Ohio up into Illinois and Indiana. very soon. So if you're in any of those areas and you want to meet us out on the mound, or you even want to travel with us, or something to that effect, just let me know. Hoodmystic at gmail.com. But we're setting that up, and we're setting up some other things, just doing a lot, just trying to get this thing rolling, and just trying to stay maintaining and doing all of that. But everything that's been presented to me thus far has been beautiful, and I'm just happy to really just accept the moment and just really live in that space. We no longer have to wait, we just have to utilize the power of now. So whatever you've been waiting for, whatever you've been trying to do it now. It's the time. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Peace and love. Please go to Instagram right now. Follow at Cali underscore IFE. Follow her. Buy some earrings, show support. She's been sponsoring us and helping us develop this channel, working with my wife and working with me. So really appreciate this young lady. Cali underscore IFE. If you support me, please go support her. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Peace, peace, peace. And I'll see you guys soon.